Okay, hey guys, this is Dr. Chaffee. Just wanted to do a quick video just going over some of the points that was made in the recent carnivore versus vegan debate that was held by ACNEM, and just do a bit of a rebuttal on some of the points that the vegan team made, just because we didn't have as much of a back and forth during the debate itself. So I just wanted to address some of the points that they had as well, and sort of go through them live, and then sort of stop and start and talk about things as we go. Okay. Also, just want to say, I had a really nice time with this time. Everybody involved, whether or not we agree or disagree, everyone, was coming from a very honest place. They my impression was that everybody, truly wanted what was right for people. They wanted to sort of figure out the truth and what was the best way to help people. And I think that's the best way of doing things. And I think it's very important for like-minded people in that regard to come together and have these sorts of discussions. And I think that it went very well from that standpoint. And everything was very collegial, which is the way to do it. I mean, you have to have these sorts of discussions and debates so that people can hash out their ideas and bounce them off other people that have an opposing view and see what comes up. So I think that went well from that standpoint, and I just wanted to go through some of those. So we'll start here with the first gentleman who's
heard from an amazing gastroenterologist.
There we go.
Let's now hear from Jason Kaplan, a phenomenal cardiologist.
So Dr. Kaplan's a cardiologist.
Go on, Jason.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining, and thank you, Pran, for opening up the debate. I want to start off to think about why we choose a dietary pattern. We either choose it to live longer or to prevent disease. And Pran gave some very interesting arguments, but nowhere did I hear about anything about the carnivore diet preventing the most common diseases of Western society or prolonging life. The major diseases in our society.
Just a quick one on that. So obviously there aren't robust studies that have specifically exclusively looked at the carnivore diet and what that's going to do long term. These are starting to come out now. Harvard just published a study. There was another study that just came out just a couple of days ago as well. And this is going to sort of get the ball rolling on those sorts of things. So hopefully we will get that sort of thing. The point that people in the meat is good or carnivore camp are coming from or are making is that there is data and there is information that it is very clear that the thoughts and notions that we've had for decades now are actually not true. And so when you have something based on a false pretense predicated on information that we now know is false, or we have new information that now shows that it's not accurate, you have to sort of throw those assumptions out, and you have to start over again. Okay, and that's a lot of what these arguments are from. They're quite robust, actually. So just not having a specific study. Oh, where's your RCT that shows exactly what carnivore does? Well, they're coming, but there's evidence that exists outside of that, and a big part of that evidence is showing that your evidence isn't actually accurate. Okay.
Our society relate to cardiovascular disease, cardiometabolic disease, and cancer. And vegan and mostly plant-based diets are the only dietary patterns that are able to achieve these goals. When we think about choosing a dietary pattern for our health,
just a quick one there again. I addressed this in my part of the debate, and I went further on my larger discussion on my arguments. What is a vegan diet? Vegan just means not meat. So the only thing that makes a vegan diet is not meat. So any vegan diet, so just eat Oreo cookies and shoot heroin, that's okay. That's going to reduce your cancer rate. That's going to be better than eating a steak. Really? Probably not. So when you're talking about a vegan diet, like, what does that even mean? Generally when people go vegan, they're being very health conscious. They're thinking about this. They're not eating processed foods. They're not going out to meals. They're not drinking sodas. They're not eating things with a bunch of added sugar and so forth. You're cutting out a lot of things that actually cause harm, and we know cause harm. And so of course you're going to get better if you were eating those things before. And so that's not a controlled experiment. A controlled experiment means you change one variable and you look at this group that hasn't changed anything. You change one variable and then you look at this group. That's what a controlled trial looks at. That's not what's going on here with the vegan community. They're not just changing one thing. They're changing dozens of things. And then they're saying, oh, wow, but because we call it vegan, vegan means no meat, that's what it is. Well, no, I'm sorry. If you stop eating meat and you just eat a bunch of Oreo cookies and you're drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes, all plant-based, you are not going to be doing well. I'm sorry. So they're doing a lot of other things. The people that have benefits are doing a lot of other things because a lot of people don't. A lot of people do eat a bunch of crap because they think that, well, it's vegan, therefore it's good for me. No, of course it's not.
Health and well-being, we have to think about outcome benefits. The first thing we do is do no harm, and I have seen plenty of harm done by people eating a predominantly carnivore diet, especially with underlying heart disease. And then we have to think about choosing a dietary pattern that has evidence for outcomes and reduced disease rates. When we recommend this for our patients and ourselves and for the people around us, this is what we need to look for. And the evidence needs to be consistent for the food patterns and individual foods within that particular patterns. And that can only be said for a vegan diet. As a preventative cardiologist, I've been on a 10-year journey to recommend sustainable dietary pattern that will allow patients to have a reduced disease rate and reduced reliance on medications to treat cardiovascular disease. And it's no surprise to see that the ex-president of the American College of Cardiology, Kim Williams, after his first heart attack, decided to become vegan, and also other wonderful preventative cardiologists such as Robert Vogel, team doctor to the NFL, and Dean Ornish. Throughout this debate, I would urge...
Okay, so that's appealing to authority, first of all. Just because some expert or something somewhere says this is the right way to go doesn't actually mean that it is. Hitler was an expert. Hitler was an authority. Do we just do everything that he said because, he's an authority? No, of course not. That's nice that, people are going this, that they feel that they're an expert and they feel that that's the right thing for them to do, but it doesn't actually prove anything, And again, what vegan diets is he talking about? Does he just say, yeah, just eat Oreo cookies and, and a bunch of pasta and drink soda? That's all vegan. Oreo cookies are vegan. Okay. So, I'm positive that he is not having people do that when they go onto a vegan diet. And I'm sure he doesn't recommend that either. So there's this conflation where you're saying you go onto a vegan diet and everything gets better. And I'm sure he's having, very good results, and he's obviously someone who cares about his patients and obviously someone who's trying to do the best for them. And I'm sure that the diets and things like that they're putting forward are helping them. Where are they starting? Where are they ending up? They're probably eating a whole bunch of processed crap with a bunch of sugar and carbohydrates and other nonsense. And then he's getting them off all of that crap and putting them on like a whole food, vegan, sort of plant-based, whatever. And at the same time, he's saying, and reduce the amount of fat and, saturated fat, and animal products that you have, But he's going to be changing a lot of things as well, okay? And we have so much evidence to show that cholesterol doesn't actually cause heart disease. That's not the problem here. There's an inflammatory process, and it actually has to do with hyperglycemia and different kinds of cholesterol molecules like VLDL and VLDL and SDLDL that are derived from fructose and alcohol, not from meat. And that these then get glycated from the high blood sugar, and that your body can't suck these things up anymore because it's damaged now. That's what glycation is what kills diabetics, having that high blood sugar. And so now your body can't suck these things up. Your liver can't process them. The only things that can pick these up are the scavenger receptors on your macrophages. And so your macrophages start picking these things up. They just eat them up, and they grow and grow and grow. They turn these massive foam cells. And during this whole inflammatory process, you start getting these atherosclerotic plaques. Okay, that's been well described in the literature. Okay, so it's not cholesterol. It's this entire disease process that is generally pushed and predicated on eating sugar, eating carbohydrates, drinking alcohol, okay? Smoking cigarettes. Oh, there's a ton of things that add to this, but just eating cholesterol is really not not the driving factor here.
The carnivore team to produce any long-term studies to show that a carnivore diet produces a reduction in event rates or reduction in cancer.
Again, we don't have those studies that show specifically a carnivore diet is going to do this. We've got a ton of evidence and studies showing that like ketogenic does it. We have a ton of evidence, biochemical evidence, showing that if you cut out carbohydrates, this shrinks cancers, that this actually reduces your risk of cancers and so forth by certain specific biochemical pathways that get disrupted when you eat carbohydrates, okay, at a microcellular level, okay. So that's a false argument. It's like, of course we're not going to produce a long, 30-year long carnivore study showing that. They don't exist yet because this is a very new, burgeoning argument that's actually very, very old, but it's just being rediscovered now. And so we of course we don't have the data for that, but we do have data looking at indigenous people like the Inuits and so forth, or the native Australians, where they weren't eating any plant-based products at all. They're eating very high-fat diets. They weren't getting any of these problems. And they'll argue there's like, oh well, there's these studies that actually show that the Inuits and so forth, living wherever, actually have mixed sort of some have heart disease, some have atherosclerosis, some don't, some have diabetes. Actually, you can't just say that. Those studies look at the Inuit people as an ethnic population, not living in their natural state as carnivores, as high-fat carnivores. They're talking about, so they're including the people living in cities eating a Western diet. Well, we all know that's going to be a problem. We're not talking about the ethnic group Inuits. We're talking about their traditional diet, and what does that do? And that actually shows a significant benefit of in health and reduction in disease. I learned when I was a kid that Native Americans, when eating a Western diet, were 4 times as likely to get obesity, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and so forth, right? And I remember thinking as a kid, well, doesn't that mean that the food is causing the disease? Because if they don't eat the food, they don't get the disease. And we eat the food and we get the disease, we just get it at a lower rate. And I was thinking, well, okay, what is a non-Western diet? What would they normally be eating that they're not now? And, what are they eating that we're not, and vice versa, right? They never really said anything, but the answer to that is they were high-fat carnivores. Plains Indians were eating buffalo. They drive a herd off a cliff. They have really fatty meat and make pemmican. Look it up. It's cool. It's actually really good. They would eat that the rest of the damn year. Okay, and you have the Inuits up north. They're eating seal and walrus and bear and things like that, polar bear, fish and so forth. So, then when they go into a Western diet and drink alcohol and eat sugar and things like that as well, they get very, very sick. Okay, but then if you stop eating that, it goes away. Okay, so that's showing causation there. And there's a study in Australia that actually showed that as well, because they're very, very unhealthy population, as a whole here in Australia, the native Australians. That's because they're eating Western food, and they're drinking alcohol, eating sugar, and all these sorts of things. And then someone figured out, I was like, okay, well, if you guys don't normally eat this stuff, why don't you just go back to eat what you normally do, which is meat, just animals that you are able to hunt in the wild. And then when you got them on that, it just reversed everything. Okay, so this is showing causation. Okay, and there's actual studies that do show causation with like fructose and metabolic disease and all these other sorts of things as well. So again, you don't have that perfectly designed 30-year RCT with carnivore versus whatever, but there's other things that exist. There's where's the randomized control trial showing that parachutes work? Where's the randomized control trial showing that smoking causes cancer, or atherosclerosis or emphysema? This is something we just take for granted. This is what we're taught. This is what we teach, and this is what we see. But there aren't any randomized control trials showing that. Okay, so again, There's evidence that exists outside of a randomized controlled trial, but there are carnivore studies coming as well.